McGinniss is 48 years old and has published 6 books, the most recent being Blind Faith of 1989. The first, The Selling of the President, 1968, written when he was 26, brought him immediate fame and acclaim. In the 1968 Nixon-Humphrey campaign, he had penetrated the inner councils of the advertising agency hired by Nixon, and in his book he revealed the techniques by which Nixon had been made to appear less awful on television. This was in the early days of television's use in politics, and McGinnis's revelations, today very tame, seemed startling and ominous. The defeated Humphrey was quoted on the book jacket as having said, "The biggest mistake in my political life was not to learn how to use television," and "I'm fighting packaged politics. It's an abomination for a man to place himself completely in the hands of the technicians, the ghostwriters, the experts, the pollsters, and come out only as an attractive package." During our talk, McGinniss spoke of how he had come to write The Selling of the President, and surprised me when he said that he had first taken his idea of reporting a presidential advertising campaign to the Humphrey camp. Humphrey's people said, "Are you crazy? This is all secret. The public shouldn't know about this. No way." Humphrey's advertising agency was Doyle Dane Bernbach, a very sophisticated group who recognized right up front that a book calling attention to the process would not be in their best interest, so they wouldn't give me any access at all. Nixon's people were almost touchingly naive. They said, "Oh gosh, really? A book? Yeah, sure." These were people who had had very little experience of being written about. Then, as if the ghost of Bostwick had just appeared at his side, McGinniss added, "But I hardly felt the obligation to say when I arrived at their offices every morning, 'Gentlemen, I must again remind you that I am a registered Democrat who plans to vote against Mr. Nixon, and that I think what you're doing, which is trying to fool the American people, is sinister and malevolent, and that I intend to portray you in terms that you are not going to find flattering.' I felt no obligation to make that statement. And when they were talking about what they were doing and turned to me and said, 'What do you think of that?' I'd say, 'Yeah, that looks good,' if I thought it was done effectively. I was trying to make myself as unobtrusive a presence as possible. And when the book was published, they reacted with outrage or wry amusement, depending on their sense of humor or their degree of passion as Nixonians, but in no case did anyone think he could sue because he had been defrauded into believing I was going to do something other than what I did." McGinnis's next book was a novel, The Dream Team, which was a critical and commercial failure. Then, in 1976, he published a curious book called Heroes. It is a confessional work that, like many such exercises, confesses something different from what the confessor thinks he is confessing. By making himself into a subject, the autobiographer sets himself up for a betrayal no less profound than that invited by the subject of someone else's writing. Heroes juxtaposes chapters about, among other personal matters, McGinnis's inability to be nice to his girlfriend, Nancy Doherty, now his second wife, because of the guilt he feels over leaving his wife and 3 children, with chapters about meetings with public figures such as Eugene McCarthy, Ted Kennedy, Daniel Berrigan, George McGovern, William Westmoreland, and William Styron, who disappoint him and confirm him in his notion that there are no heroes left in the world. Before his meeting with McCarthy, over lunch at Toots Shores, McGinniss rehearses his lines. What I wanted to say to him was, "Look, once you were at the center of things. Everything revolved around you. You had squeezed your whole universe into a ball and had it held in your hands, and no one could touch it. Now it's gone. The moment has passed. It won't be back." I wanted to say also that once I had been at the center of things. At 26, I had written a book which had become the best-selling nonfiction book in America. It had got good reviews almost everywhere. It was deemed important, and as its author, so was I. The youngest person ever, I was told, to have written a book that became #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, not counting Anne Frank.